One of the kickers of intuition is getting accurate, intuitive information about yourself. Sometimes that can be really hard to do. And in this video, I'm going to go over why.
This is your moment. This is your moment in time. This is your moment.
I want to thank you for coming along with me on this journey. I want you to make sure to click subscribe and the notification bell. That way you'll be notified when more of these videos come out, and you and I together, we can keep exploring these possibilities. Now, let's jump in. When it comes to getting intuitive information about yourself, it can be hard. It can be difficult. And we find that our accuracy goes down, and it's very frustrating. There's a couple of reasons for this, and there's a couple of things that we can do. So stick with me as I go over a few reasons why it's hard to get accurate information and what can be done about it. Okay, let's jump into the why. Why is it hard for me to get the information I want to get? I sit down, I get into a meditative state, I'm all ready to be intuitive. I ask the question, perhaps you get something, perhaps you don't. Frustrating if you don't. I get that. There's one reason for that. But when you do get stuff and it doesn't line up or it doesn't match up, there can be a couple of reasons for that too. So let's start with the one situation where you're not getting any information. You sit down, you say, okay, perhaps you want to find out if you should sell your home. And so you sit down and you try to intuitively find out, okay, should I sell my home? Whether you're aiming to talk to guides or to your higher self or to source, we all have our individual connection that's unique to us. So whatever that connection is that you're tapping into to get intuitive information, you ask the question and there's nothing, just dead air, just no response whatsoever. Couple reasons for this. Well, mostly one reason for this. It's typically because you're not supposed to know. It's typically because if they were to give you that piece of information, whether it be source or your guides, or perhaps even someone from the other side, by giving you that information, it's going to skew what's supposed to happen to you. Sometimes it's not always good to know everything. And we have to settle into that. And in some ways, we have to be okay with that, because I get it. I understand what it is. I want to know everything coming up. I want to know what's going to happen. And I really want to know when it's going to happen. Wanting to know these things, totally human, totally natural. I'm right there with you. However, sometimes too much information is too much information. And then we can make steps in a direction that isn't the best direction. So sometimes not knowing an outcome is the best space to be. This is where we have to step in, and we have to trust our guides. We have to trust our loved ones. We have to trust source, that maybe they know us well enough to know that this one piece of information should just sort of stay off the radar for right now. Doesn't mean you should sell your house, you shouldn't sell your house if you don't get any information. No, it just means that input right now from your intuitive source, it's not necessarily exactly what you need. Or perhaps there's another question that you need to ask. Now, another reason why we can get blocked with accuracy and things like this is that we can get in our own way. So it's one thing to not get a piece of information. Most likely what that means is that either you're way deep into your human life and it's really hard to access intuition, but most likely, like I said, it's usually one reason, and that piece of information is just not a good piece of information for you to have right now when it comes to the process in your spiritual path. Moving forward, on the other side of this, though, is that you do get information. Let's say you sit down, you tap in, you relax, you get into the zone, you ask, should I sell my house right now? Or should I not sell my house right now? And you get an answer. And then that answer ends up being wrong. Let me give him an easier example. Am I going to meet the person of my dreams within the next week? And you get the answer, yes. And a week goes by and it didn't happen. Why is this? The biggest reason for this one is we're in our own way. The easiest way to say this is that your desires, your wants, your needs, your intent all gets in the way of intuition. It is far easier to get an intuitive piece of information that's highly accurate about a situation that you don't know anything about. This is because your emotions don't get involved, your opinion doesn't get involved, and your desires and your wants does not get involved. If somebody says to you, okay, person A is trying to decide whether to go left or right, and that's all you know, if you sit with that intuitively, most likely you're going to have very high accuracy with your answer. Why? Because you're not vested in the situation. You don't have emotions connected to it. That left brain of yours, that left brain is what interrupts our intuition. It analyzes things. It says, well, this is what I think, right? And in essence, when you're asking for intuitive information to come through from source, from guides, et cetera, you're not asking yourself what you think. You're asking an outside source, but what you think can get in the way. So when our left brain activates and starts to, pick apart what we think or what we want, that really blocks accurate information from coming through. It's really common. So now let me say it this way to emphasize why you're not alone when it comes to possible frustration around getting information for yourself. It requires you or an individual, myself, to set aside our wants, our desired outcome, our opinion on the situation. If you can put all of that 100% to the side, you'll get more accurate information. Now, can you see why it's difficult to get accurate information? Because really what I'm asking of you is to completely put aside all of your feelings, all of your intent, all of your emotions. You can imagine how hard that is when you're asking a question to source, to guides, to loved ones, when you're asking a question and asking for intuitive answer to come through on something that's very serious too. This could be about, is my brother going to be okay? Is my child going to be able to go to college, or things like this? When you have a really strong emotional connection to a possible outcome, it really, really gets in the way of intuition. It's a kicker, like I said, but it is the way it is. We're human, we came down here, we said, all right, we're a spiritual being having a human experience, and that human experience is going to get in the way of having full unlimited access to all of the answers. If you're experiencing this, you're not alone. You're not alone. And on top of it, you can even have really strong intuitive moments and then randomly have, a kind of a low time where it's really hard to tap into that intuition. When that happens, you may have heard me say this before, but when that happens, it's because your human life is really in front of you, is really asking a lot of you, whether that is moving to a new location, starting a new job, a wedding, a death, whatever it is that really brings you into the human, it's going to pull you a little bit away from having easier access to your intuition. Your intuition didn't go anywhere. It's still there. But when we focus very much so on our human existence, it can be harder to tap into our intuition. Now, when we're not getting information, I mentioned chances are good. We're just probably not supposed to know that piece. When we do get information and it doesn't come to fruition the way that we received the information, and it ends up completely being different, you realize your accuracy wasn't good, chances are really good you had too much of a vested interest in the outcome. This is really common, really common. So let's talk about what we can do. What can we do about this? Well, there's a couple avenues that you can take. You can find another intuitive that you trust. Please find somebody you trust. If you don't know one, please get a referral. This is probably not something where you just jump online and you call up the first one you find in Google. Find a trusted intuitive that you can ask this question of. Even if you're very intuitive, even if you're used to sitting down and getting intuitive messages for different situations or different people, things like this, sometimes, like I said, it hits too close to home. You can't shut off that left brain. You can't shut off that intention. So it's going to be really hard to get information around the situation that you're focused on. Now, we don't necessarily need to reach out to another intuitive. It's just one avenue that can help. I have one of my closest friends is very intuitive. And on a rare occasion, I might reach out to her and say, okay, I'm dealing with something that's a little too close to home. I just need you to peek in on it. Could you please do that for me? Because I've been a professional medium for years. I teach intuitive development. The Sage Method course has been out in the global for years now. And I'm still going to be first in line telling you, doesn't matter how intuitive you get, doesn't matter how strong, you can tap into that strong intuitive channel that you do have. You just got to uncover it. It doesn't matter. You're still going to have moments where you're too close to the subject. All right. Here's something else that you can do. You can start to use tools such as pendulum. Automatic writing is kind of borderline, but some sort of a tool that is outside of yourself, whether this is a set of cards, reader cards, or like I said, a pendulum, or it can be as much as, you can use a dice, ask a question. If it's this number or higher, it's this. If it's this number or lower, it's this. A tool it's outside of you. It's something, especially pendulum, that's something that you can say yes or no and get some information on. This is still going to be a little bit iffy. It's not going to be as strong as, asking somebody outside the situation to tap in for you. It's still going to be a little iffy because our intent is in our energetic body. Okay. And if our energetic body is, dealing with the tools as well, it can affect the tools. However, by doing something physical instead of just sitting, sometimes you can use that tool to get answers. Here's a really good one. If you ask a question, you want an answer to a question, try to ask a question that has two outcomes, either this outcome or that outcome. Write those outcomes on two different pieces of paper, fold them up identical so you can't tell which is which, mix them up, toss them in the air, spin them around so you have no idea which one is which. Sit with one in your hand and feel what that feels like. Sit with the other one in your hand and feel what that feels like. Any way that you can use a tool to kind of blind yourself as if you can't see what the possible outcome could be, or you couldn't figure out what the outcome could be. Anytime you can do that, your accuracy is going to go up, because that is a way of getting you out of the way. And I've gone to that before. I've done that where I've wanted to know an answer. And so I've broken it down into two possible outcomes, written each outcome on a piece of paper, mixed them up so I had no idea which one was which, and then sat with each one at a time to see how I felt and what intuitive sensations came through. It doesn't even have to be super strong intuitive information. You can pick one up and feel hollow and pick up the other one up and feel full. And you know that the one where you feel full is the answer. So anything you can do to get your left brain out of the process of receiving the answer is very good. And sometimes spiritual tools can do that for you. It's very common for me to use a deck of reader's cards. Actually, this is one of my favorite decks. The Silver Era Tarot. I will take that out. I will give myself a couple options, put 3 different cards down for each option, take a deep breath, and then flip over the cards and read them accordingly. Now, we can translate these cards sometimes in the ways that we want to translate them, but if you can hold back that emotion as you flip the cards, sometimes you'll get some clarity through there. So use tools to help you get out of your own way. And then lastly, for those that are very strong with setting visuals or intent, this might work for you. I tell people to imagine a box. I've done this one too. Works pretty well in certain situations for me. Imagine a box. All right. Perhaps your guide is holding that box for you, or You can just imagine it sitting next to you and allow yourself for 30 seconds to take all of your desires, all of your intent behind the situation that you're trying to tap into. You take all of that and imagine it like a cloud of light, and you're going to put it in that box and you're going to shut that lid. Then tap in, then get the answers, then open that box up and bring the intent back. We're not trying to get rid of the emotion around a situation, but what we're trying to do is walk through kind of a mini ceremony to say, I'm going to allow myself for this window of time to set aside my intent. Then you step forward, get into your meditative state, start with, I am not concerned with the outcome. All outcomes are perfectly welcome. Any outcome works perfectly. Then you ask the question. For some people, it might not be a spiritual tool and it might not be reaching out to somebody else, but you might be able to give yourself that little window of time where your heart isn't wrapped around the outcome. If you can do that, your accuracy will go up. It's, like I said, a kicker, but it's very common. And you're not alone with it for sure. Talk to anybody and they'll say, oh, sometimes it's just really hard to get intuitive information about myself or about somebody really close to you. It can be hard to get information for a friend. The more you know about a situation, the more awareness you have about the players in the situation and what's going on and how it's unfolding and what you want, the harder it is to get accurate information. Instead of just getting a piece of information delivered, it's kind of delivered in like a block of Jell-O, which is all the emotions around it. So it's really hard to see through that and see the intuitive information clearly. I get it. Happens all the time. The last time I went to buy a car, it wasn't the last time, it was the time before that. I remember standing in the car lot thinking, oh, should I buy this car or shouldn't I? And I laughed at myself because I knew darn well I wanted the car. Even if my intuition said no, it was going to come through as a yes. So know yourself, know how much intent you have behind the outcome that you're looking forward toward, and know that sometimes you need to ask for a little bit of help or find a way to kind of pull yourself out of the emotion of it in order to get accurate information. Also know that you're supported. You are supported by your guides, by your spiritual team, by source. The universe is absolutely working in your favor. And even if you don't sit down to get that intuitive information, you're still cared for, you're still watched over, and things will still work out exactly as they should. It's very simple to keep your heart focused on your spiritual path. Just reminding yourself that you're on your path, you're loved, and you're supported. It's that simple. And that act alone keeps you connected into your spirituality. And that's very powerful. And that's where it's sometimes a little easier to get information. But I digress. Again, you're not alone. Stick with it. Set up something that's going to work for you. Get creative. Everyone is different when it comes to how their intuition works and how it flows. It's unique to you. It's unique to your personality. So get creative with it. It's that creativity where you're going to start to see it really expand.
This is your moment.